What are you hoping to get from this session? Type it into the chat so I can see them. And hopefully we can cover all those topics. But the topic for today's workshop essentially is pathway to financial freedom. We're going to be looking at a lot of fundamentals, things that you definitely need to know before you can get anywhere financially. But if you have specific things that you would like to learn as well, or questions you have and the questions that you would want answers to, then absolutely type it into the chat. Let's see those questions. Let's see those. More on taxes. Okay. I guess we would have to get specific later on during the Q&A. Hopefully, I'm able to cover the essence of the workshop in about 30 minutes so that we would have a whole lot of time to discuss taxes and other topics. Like I said, we'll start from the fundamentals, then definitely we can start getting into the complex areas. How to keep most of my income, tax reduction. Okay. More on taxes, tax reduction, keeping more of your income. What else? Welcome, everyone. We're going to start in a bit. I'm just waiting for a few more people to join us. We should start in about 60 seconds time. Mm. All right. So in order to respect everyone's time, we'll just get started and everyone else can join us on the call. So once again, good afternoon. I hope the weekend is going on very well. We'll be looking at a few items on our financial journey that will definitely help us and increase our chance of hitting those financial targets. Before I start, let me quickly introduce myself. I'm Joseph Sharemi. I have licenses and certification in accounting and finance. I've worked with a bank in the past, and this is my passion. I love numbers, and I definitely love talking about it. So today I'm hoping to answer as many questions as I can, and if there's anything that I need to get back to any of us on, absolutely, I'll make that known. So I hope this will be very impactful for everyone. The best way to achieve that is to make sure that we are asking questions. Just feel free typing your questions into the chat. We would have enough time towards the end of the session, maybe about 30 minutes, to answer all those questions. And who knows, we could also have people on the call that will be able to chip in, provide guidance and comments. Nobody is an island of knowledge, so I'm not expecting to be the only one imparting us today. But obviously, I'll be the facilitator and I'll take the lead. All right, so getting into it, pathway to financial freedom. We'll be covering these three things essentially. The last part has to do with question and answers. Like I said, I intend to give us a lot of time for us to, interact and answer all those questions that we probably might have. The first thing is to look at where we are currently. So how do we establish the starting point? So we said pathway to financial freedom. And the assumption is that we already know where we are, we know where we're going, and then we're finding that path to get there. But that's a big assumption. There are a lot of people that will still need to figure out their current situation and then also figure out where they want to get to or where they need to get to. That's the point where it will be useful for you to now find the pathway to connect you from point A, where you are, to where you need to go. So we would have to figure out our starting point, and I'll show us a few examples. We'll be looking at a lot of numbers today because at the end of the day, you can't run it. When you're talking about money, you can't run away from numbers. So I'll make it very simple, but we'll be looking at numbers. So we'll look at where to start. We'll also be looking at how much money we need. So how much money exactly is enough? Like one of my mentors will say, anything you have in excess of your need is greed. And so like what amount of money is enough for you to take care of both your expenses and your goals and your desires and everything else? Ballpark figure, how much is enough? And what kinds of monies do you need? Then finally, since we've established at that point how much money we need, we can now start talking about the pathway to getting that money. How do we get it? Like someone already asked in the chat, How do I reduce my taxes? How do I keep more of my income or most of my income? So that's where we start looking at the opportunities for us to either retain more of the income we already earn or expand the envelope and earn more income outside of what we are currently familiar with. Then we'll get into the Q&A. If you have any questions, you can type it into the chat or you can note them down. We'll have enough time to get into it later on. Now, the first aspect, as I promised, where do I start? What's my current situation right now? So we're taking off trying to chart a path to that end goal, whatever the financial target is. But the first question to ask ideally is, before I start charting that path, where am I right now? If you want to get to $100,000 and you already have $86,000, then the journey is not too far off, just about 14K, and you'll get to where you need to get to. But if you're at like $3,000 and your target is the same $100,000, then of course you need to double up. So where are you currently has to do with assessing your financial situation. And the key word in there will be budgeting. So if you're taking notes, this is the first point where you need to pay close attention. Where you start from at any point in time when you're talking about finances is budgeting. Do you have a budget currently? If you have a budget, how well do you manage your budget? Because budget is basically like an estimate of what the income will be over a period of time, what the expenses will be over that same period of time, and what the surplus or deficit will be. We'll look at an example on the next slide, but basically you need to have a budget. There are several tools that you can use to draw up a budget. There are free tools you can download online, free templates on Excel, and I can also share an Excel template with you for free. If you're interested in it, absolutely indicate and I'll get it across to you. So set up a budget to start understanding your income, expenses, and whatever you have left. Either it's a deficit or a surplus. Then the next thing you need to do is to figure out what the target is for you. The target is going to be different for each person. I might have a desire to hit $1 million and I'll be fine. And the next person to me might just have a target of 500K, and it is absolutely, there's no right or wrong answer. We would have different targets. But in there, I would prefer that we start being very intentional and specific with how much money is enough. So I'll show us how to go about it in the next few slides. But in there, you need to figure out what your financial goals are. What kind of monies are you targeting for now and later? Then finally, we can now start looking at how to connect from point A to B, where we are to where we need to be. So starting with budgeting, like I said, this is a sample budget on my right. So like you see already, you have income at the very top. Then you have several items that can digest that income. So typically when we have our income coming in from any source, business, investments, 9 to 5 jobs, you will end up spending it on three major things. One will be your needs, the next one will be your wants, then the last one I called opportunities, because in that bucket, you'll be able to do whatever you like with that money. If you're not disciplined enough, you wouldn't even have any money for opportunities. And we'll see how that plays out in a bit. But let's take this sample budget, right? So we have somebody who earns two streams of income, one from maybe 9 to 5, $4,000. The second one, $1,000, maybe from a side gig, maybe Uber Eats and side runs. So the total amount this person earns per month is $5,000. Now, in terms of needs, needs are the essentials that we're familiar with: food, groceries, clothing, shelter, and all that, right? This person spends $2,500 out of the 5K on needs, $1,500 on wants, and the remaining on savings, paying debts, and investments. Coincidentally, I hope everybody noticed that this person does not invest at all. Zero on investments. But typically, this is what you would find a lot of people recommend for how to manage your budget. So if your budget, whatever the amount is 100%, you would typically be advised to spend nothing more than 50% on your needs. Then about 30% is allowed to be spent on your wants. But if you can spend less than that on your wants because they are not particularly essentials, and again, this will vary from person to person. Some people cannot do without dining out, so they will probably move that into their needs. But whatever your wants are, you are not expected to spend more than 30% on it so that you would have 20% left for opportunities. And the situation can be can vary very vastly for different people. Like all the money you earn might not even be enough to take care of your needs. So you might have 100% income and everything is being consumed within your needs alone. Maybe you have a large family, maybe you're an immigrant, you're just trying to find your feet, whatever the situation is. So all these things are merely prescriptive. They are not cast in stone. Everybody's situation, that's probably one thing you'd hear me say frequently. Everybody's situation is going to be different. But once you start having a framework in mind that, oh, okay, my target is 50, 30, 20, then you can start moving things around to make sure that you, at the end of the day, the target is to have as much of your money going to opportunities as possible. So we're going to be using this example for some other calculations that we'll see later on. So be mindful of some of the figures. He or she earns $5,000 and spends 25 plus 15 on expenses. The remaining 1,000 is on opportunities. Unfortunately, $500 is going to debt repayment, so that's not particularly available for opportunities. So $4,000 is for expenses. Total income is $5,000 per month. If you multiply that by 12, you get $60,000 per month. So that's this person's take home. Let's call him Charles so that it's easy not to keep repeating this person. So Charles earns $60,000 in a year take home. That's net. So the gross is going to be around $75,000 because this is after tax. Before tax will be about $75,000. All right, so that's how you budget. It doesn't have to be restricted to this number of items here. The template I pulled this from has, I think, about 30 items in there. But of course, I just had to make it very concise. Now, one of the reasons why we're having this session is the debt burden that we have in Canada. It's a problem. It's a very big problem. According to reports from TransUnion is one of our credit institutions in Canada, TransUnion, and I think it's Equifax. So TransUnion report says that the total consumer spending or total consumer credit is about $2.5 trillion. If you break that down into each household in Canada, we have about 41 million people in Canada. It comes down to about $270,000 in per household. That's how much they owe in consumer credit or in consumer spending. Now, part of that amount obviously has to do with mortgage. But even the credit card debt on that is about $4,000 to $5,000. So whenever you have conversations around credit, consumer spending, and debt, it's all about you being able to manage your budget. The only reason why anybody would have a carried amount on their credit card from month to month is simply because they're spending more than they're earning. If you have enough money, you wouldn't need to leave money. Even if you use your credit card, you would pay it up before the due date. But if you have any amount left on your credit card that moves from one month to the other, then it's a quick indication of an inefficiency in the way you budget your expenses. Are you living within your means? Are you exceeding that? And how much trouble are you getting into? Because that can spiral up very quickly. So like I said, $2.5 trillion in total consumer credit. And part of the things that we find out people spend it on will be on groceries and drugs, drugs being medicine or medication, gasoline, that's fuel, healthcare that is not covered by Manitoba Health. We can see that that part is actually the least because we have the privilege of enjoying free health to an extent in Canada. Then you have other durable goods, games, and whatever it is. Then you have personal attires like wears. Maybe winter clothing might actually be part of the essentials, but wears that are not necessarily essentials. Now, whenever this consumer spending happens, the government will get taxes. Anything you buy in Canada, you pay taxes. In Manitoba, it's about 12%, right? 12% inclusive of the federal taxes. Businesses will get profits, banks will get interest, but the consumer gets more debt. So you spend money, you owe money, they charge you interest on your credit card. The consumer is usually bearing the brunt of it. So that's why it makes sense for us to be mindful of the debt load that we have personally or within the household and be able to manage and tame that through a budget. Like I said, you can always reach out and I'll share a budgeting template with you, or you can check online and find a free version to use. So that's where you start from. Create a budget, understand if you have a surplus or a deficit, and then you can move on from that point. The next item is to figure out how much we need. So now we know how much we have. The money we have is the income, and then at the end of that template, you'd end up with either a surplus or a deficit. So you know where you are. So the next one is how much do I need? Interestingly, I also had to absorb this into the presentation and workshop today because I've asked people severally. I'm a financial advisor. I get the opportunity to speak with, if not over, well, maybe in the hundreds now. Like, I have so many clients and prospects and interactions very frequently, and I get opportunity to kind of perform my own miniature survey, right? When I ask the question, how much do you need from people, it's interesting. It's either they don't know and they confess that they do not know, or a lot of people that have asked will tell you $1 million or $10 million, or they'll say something ridiculous like $1 trillion. Nobody even has $1 trillion as a date. Now, it's a quick indication for me that you've not gone through the exercise of documenting your needs. So when I say how much do you need? Need for what? Is it need for your rent, need for your personal needs, need for legacy, need for retirement? What exactly do you need money for? If I give you $1 trillion today, what will you use it for? So that's the question that needs to be answered. So the opportunity we have here today is to start looking at what exactly do we need money for? If we break it into pieces, then we add it all up. How much does that come into? But first, we need to break it into pieces. So how much do we need? We need money for three main things, right? Now, and later essentially, but you can break down later into retirement plans or plans for other projects for yourself and plans for others. So the later need, the one you need for now is mostly about yourself and your family and what you need to spend on your bills and expenses today. The one you need for later is about your retirement, future projects, and legacy that you want to leave behind for your children or for charity or for estate. Estate planning, when you mention estate planning to a lot of people, it sounds vague or something that will probably never be relevant. But the truth is, we are in Canada. There are a lot of things that people don't pay attention to, and definitely there will be a day of reckoning. I'll give you an example. If you have an RRSP, Registered Retirement Savings Plan, and you keep money in there, if the person who owns the RRSP dies, the money is deemed as if they withdrew it the same day. If it's an investment, it's as if you liquidated your investment the same day. And the taxes are due immediately. So let's say you're saving for your retirement and you don't have proper estate planning of how to pass on whatever you're building and amassing to your children. So you're just amassing it in RRSP. You've struggled, you've taken 5 shifts and you've built $500,000 in there. Number one, $500,000 assessed as income in the same year puts you in the highest tax bracket, which is about 53%. So if you are to pay 53% of $500,000, so that means you'll be paying upwards of $250,000 to the government. So if your wish was to have everything that you build pass on to your children, it's just going to be a fantasy at that point because it's deemed as if you liquidated it and the government would have their share of the pie. So legacy and estate planning is very relevant. By God's grace, we would all live to 150 years old, but some point it's going to happen. When that happens, do you want to be intentional about how your funds are distributed, or do you want to leave it to chance? So that's the one on estate planning. So you can always plan to hedge the taxes that you're going to pay, meaning if any tax falls due, you already have funds in place that would be liquidated to pay that taxes so that your own family can keep 100% of what you're building for them. So those are the three types of monies that I would recommend everybody to consider: money for now, for later, and for legacy. Now we will start looking at each of those buckets really briefly. For money that you need for now, I'll take the example of Charles. Charles has a budget of, in expenses, the expenses is $4,000. The income is five, the expenses is $4,000. Now, the rule of thumb is for you to save at least 3 months, 3 to 6 months of your monthly expenses as emergency funds. What that simply means is, God forbid, Charles loses his job, then for the next 3 months that he will be in search of a job, he needs to have money to spend on essentials, because you remember that needs will always keep going. The bills and expenses for food, groceries, and all that will always be there. So 4,000 is what Charles needs per month. So if he's going to build an emergency fund, which is about 3 to 6 months, let's assume it is three that he decided to save. So 3 months of his expenses will be 3 times 4, which is $12,000. Now, Charles has to, at any point in time, have this $12,000 in place in case something happens. Loss of job is just one of them. He could fall ill and be unable to work. He could also have maybe a flat tire, or there's a major mechanical issue with the car. He needs to replace his car. All those things are not planned for, but they do happen because this is real life. So he needs to have some funds in place, or God forbid he has a health issue that won't be covered by Manitoba Health. All those things need to be covered first by emergency funds before you get into the red, or the zero level, zero zone. So he needs to have an emergency fund of at least 12K. And I just explained how we came about it. It's expenses times either three, that's monthly expenses times three, or monthly expenses times six. And it's going to be different for different people. Personally, my emergency fund target is about 12 months, because if you want to set up a business, for example, you would need a gestation period for the business to grow and be sustainable. And it is usually a longer period of time. So I need funds that will be able to take care of me throughout that period before I can start relying on the business. So the situation will determine how much is enough for your emergency fund. But now we have an idea of how to calculate it. On the average, for Canadians, it's typically between maybe $9,000 to $18,000. But again, it can be way more than that, depending on what your future plans are. And what do you do with this kind of money? You don't just keep it in a savings account. You put it somewhere where it can earn good enough interest, but you don't want to risk it too much. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a bit. Now, money for later. The major funds that we need for later will be our retirement funds. How do we calculate retirement funds? What, again, same question. How much is enough for retirement? There's a simple formula that you can use, which is basically to multiply your income need by 25 to get your fund target. And I'll break that down a little bit. So for Charles, his expenses is the income that he has is $60,000. Your income need typically at retirement would reduce, maybe slightly or in a major way. But let's assume that the income he will need at retirement is 80% of that $60,000. So 80% of $60,000 is $48,000. Now we are multiplying it by 25. The question I get most times is, where does this 25 come from? 25 is basically the inversion of 4%, meaning let's say it's possible for me to invest my money safely in guaranteed investment certificates, GICs, and I'll earn an interest of 4%. 4% is 4 over 100. If you invert it, that would be 100 over 4. So that's how you get 25. Now, why do we do that? You would see it in a short while. If we multiply by this inverted multiplier of 25, you multiply 48K times 25, you get 1.2 million. If you put that 1.2 million into that investment that I just mentioned, GIC, and you can get a rate of return of 4% on it, what it will translate to is that the bank or whoever is holding that GIC would pay you $48,000 every year, because 4% of 1.2 million is $48,000. So I hope that makes sense. If it doesn't, we can take this conversation off the workshop, or maybe we'll get a chance to dive deeper into it later on. So I gave some other examples in here. If you feel 4% is too high because right now GIC is realistically around 3%, you can use a multiplier of 33, or you can use a multiplier of 20. So it depends on what's realistic for you. If you are a very savvy investor and you're constantly getting returns of 10%, then that means your multiplier will be different. So it depends, it will vary from person to person. But now we know what the formula is. What your income need. If you want 100% of what you're earning right now to be your income need, it's all well and good. Multiply it by the multiplier that makes sense to you based on the rate of return you can get on a safe investment. That's why I put examples like GIC and bonds. Then you get your fund target. Once you have that fund target, you can retire. I like saying retirement is not 65 years old. There's nowhere in the Constitution that it's written that you must retire by 25 years old. However, you can retire at any point in time when you know you do not need your daily job, either your 9 to 5 or whatever else you do to survive. So at that point in time, even if you keep working, it's just out of your own free will. You want to work is why you work. It's not because you need to work. So once you hit this fund target, which will be different for each person, you can easily put it into a safe investment, get that same return, the income need every year, take care of all your expenses, and you'll be fine. So you can retire at 30, at 35, it doesn't matter. Once you hit your fund target, you'll be good to go. I expect questions to come out of here later on, so you can also take a screenshot if you want. Now you can also provide this material later on, but let's go on for time because I want us to have enough time for questions. So the third type of money that you would need is for legacy. It's not quite fulfilling if, well, for me personally, if all I have is just what is sufficient for my need. Why not have in surplus so that I can help others? Maybe other immigrants that are just coming finding their footing, maybe others that are not as privileged, maybe back in Nigeria or whatever the situation is. But it will give me joy, which I think will resonate with a lot of people on the call as well, if you can satisfy needs beyond just your own. So when it comes to legacy and estate planning, you're thinking about, okay, what would I leave behind for maybe my family, but not just only my family, also for charity, building foundations, or something that would live in perpetuity beyond yourself. So what exactly are your legacy needs? What are your plans? What are your charitable goals and all that? And like I said, you also need to consider your estate planning needs. How much taxes in Canada? For anybody who's not aware, there's something called final taxes. When anybody dies, they pay taxes. I already mentioned one type. If your RRSP, Registered Retirement Savings Plan, is liquidated, it's deemed as if you sold that investment on the day the person died, and they are paying that tax that same year. So the bigger it is, the bigger the tax. So you have several needs that you'd have to anticipate and make provisions for. If you have, for example, a house that you want your family to inherit, it's not automatic, especially if you have a mortgage on the house. You have to make provisions for it. The easiest way for you to hedge that exposure is to take a life insurance policy. A life insurance policy, because that's the only thing I'm aware of that gives you an uneven multiplier of your money. Here's what I mean. If you have a life insurance policy and you fund it with maybe throughout a period of 20 years, you fund it with $48,000. You could actually have a payout that goes to your beneficiary to settle maybe final taxes, used to set up a charity or foundation and all that, of 10 times of what you put in. So if you put in $40,000, you could have a coverage paid out of $400,000. Sometimes you could even put less than that and you have a coverage of $1 million, depending on several parameters like your health, your age, and your lifestyle. So there are several things that will be considered to set up a fund that takes care of your legacy needs. Otherwise, you'd have to figure out how to save up or invest and earn up to that $1.2 million that we saw in the previous slide so that you'll be fine. Then you now have to figure out about how to make another 1 million so that others will be taken care of, and others now includes your immediate family and every other thought you might have in terms of legacy. So the easiest way to actually hedge that is through insurance. And maybe on some other workshop, I can break it down how insurance companies are able to shoulder that kind of weight, financial weight, and provide leverage for your money. So that's for another conversation. But now we have an idea of why we need to start thinking about it. It's not just because we love others, it's because we want to be intentional about how what we've worked all our life will end up and be distributed. So you have all that on the average. Again, for Canadians, you could have people having a legacy or estate need of about $100,000 up to 1 million or way more than 1 million. I did a short video recently as well saying at this point, not everybody needs life insurance. It's not for everyone. However, if you don't have the kind of money that will take care of this kind of needs, the easiest way for you to take care of the needs will be life insurance. In the future, when you have money like Elon Musk, maybe there will be more complicated things that you can put in place beyond life insurance. But between now And when you have that money like Elon Musk, the cheapest way for you to hedge this kind of risk and exposure is through life insurance. So we'll move on from there and talk about the sources of fund. I promised as well that I was going to talk about the government benefits that you can get. There are several things that the government will give to you in retirement. These three are three of the most popular or the most common. You have CPP, that's Canada Pension Plan. You have OAS, Old Age Security, and GIS, Guaranteed Income Supplement. CPP is your right. It's not like free money that government will give you because you are growing old. No. When you earn income from your 9 to 5, there's a deduction. If you look at your pay slip, or pay stub. There's a deduction in there called CPP deduction, CPP and EI deduction, employment insurance, I guess. So all those deductions are accrued and invested on your behalf so that when you get old, you are being paid from that pool of funds. If it is not enough, then the people still working will continue to pay that money that is paid out to you. So it's not, there is never free money anywhere. So you get to contribute this money and then you get paid when you retire. But here are the interesting facts. For you to get the maximum amount of CPP, you should have worked for, I think it's about 39 to 40 years. If you're an immigrant, you most likely will not have that opportunity because you're already maybe 30 years old by the time you get here, or maybe 40 years old or 50 years old. So there's no chance for you to realistically work for 40 years so that you'll be able to get the maximum possible amount for CPP. And this maximum we were talking about as at 2023 was 1,003. As at today is about maybe 1,415. I don't think it's up to 1,500 yet. That's the maximum if you work for that period of time, almost 4 decades. But if you do not work for that period of time and there are a few other requirements, the average payment for CPP is about $700 per month. Now we'll see how that makes sense later, how that compares to how much you really need. So $700 from CPP on the average. Then if you qualify for OAS, you will get OAS. And I explain what I mean by qualify for OAS in a bit. You get OAS, Old Age Security, on top of your CPP. So that's also another about $700. So that makes it 1,004. Now, not everybody is going to get OAS because there's something called clawback. Clawback simply means if you retire and you have a huge business that gives you huge income, say maybe $1 million in a year, you'll most likely not qualify for OAS because it's only given to those who cannot afford to take care of themselves adequately. So OAS is optional. CPP, definitely you get that as long as you have contributed while you are working and you meet all the other eligibility requirements. So you get another 700, that's 1,400. Then GIS is only for those who qualify for OAS. So GIS can also be up to almost $1,000 per person. If you add all those together, it will come to about $2,400 per month. Now, $2,400 per month, is it enough? In case you don't know if it's enough or not, look at the example that we gave initially. That's Charles. Charles spends $2,500 in expenses. I mean, on needs, $2,500 on needs. The total expense was $4,000. How much he earned was $5,000. So he spends just on food, groceries, clothing, rent, and all that. He spends $2,500. So let's say he qualifies for all these monies. Will 2,004 be enough? The simple answer is no, because it doesn't even cover the needs, let alone the wants, let alone have anything left for savings or vacation or whatever it is, right? So the funding gap, that's the difference between how much the government will give Charles in this case, and how much he actually needs will be either 1,006 or 2,006, depending on what you're benchmarking it against. Are you benchmarking it against the expense or you're benchmarking it against the income? His income was $5,000. So the summary of this page is that government benefits will not be enough. So you have to figure out how to cover the gap. Now, another source of funds, apart from government benefits, that you need to start planning to build and grow will be your own personal investments. Now, we remember at the beginning of the session, I was talking about the breakdown of your budget. Needs, the income that comes in, all your income streams, put it in one bucket. You would have to divide it into 3 parts: needs, wants, opportunities. It is in that opportunity bucket. That's where you are able to extract your investment fund. So you need to build that bucket to be large enough for you to invest. So when you're investing, it's mainly along three timelines: short term, mid term, long term. And the timelines are shown on the screen. So, how do you invest for your short term and for the other timelines? For short term, because you want your money to be liquid. So, for example, your emergency fund, emergencies can happen any day, anytime. So, you don't want it to be locked in into a fund that you can't access. Unfortunately, if it's something that is going to be liquid, it simply means the institution you're investing with, if it's a bank, for example, they don't have the opportunity to tie your money down into long-term investments as well. So they are going to give you a small amount of interest. So even if they call it high interest savings, in the bank as at today, the high interest savings would earn you maybe 0.7% or 1%. So it's not really anything to be happy about. So you have other examples like GICs, money market funds, and all that that you can put your money into, but you need to consider if it's going to be tied down, then it's probably not going to fit into your need for short term. So the interest rate you get is low, but the risk is also very low. For mid-term, 3 to 10 years, you can put it into some managed funds, get an interest of maybe between 4 to 6%, which is quite okay, at least better than what the banks will give you. Then that's for mid-term. So depending, all these mid-term and short-term and long-term goals has to do with your planning horizon. So what do you want to get done in 3 years? What do you want to get done between year 3 and 10? What do you want to get done in maybe after 10 years? You want to start traveling around the world and all that. What does the cost come to based on your experience right now? There are so many things you can use to come up with hard figures on how much will be enough for all these zones within your investment profile. So what you need the money for, when you need the money, then how much you need. Then you can slot it into these things. You start to figure out what you can invest your money into. There are so many options, but it has to pair up with the time horizon. How long do you want your money to be locked in for? And how much interest do you want to earn from your money? Now, the final part in the sources of funds will be business. So if you're lucky enough to be on the call and you already run your own business, you have your own establishment or company, that is fantastic. That's the biggest thing that I think would earn you unlimited amount of money. It's not even think at this point. Like once you own your own business, you can control your income. And once you can control your income, you will start attaining financial freedom. And if you're intentional and lucky, you would also attain time freedom, meaning you can use your time for whatever you want. But if you're picking shifts and you have like maybe 5 jobs combined, you definitely don't have any of your time. You don't have time control, you don't have time freedom, even though you might eventually have financial freedom. So those two things are typically what humans chase, right? All of us mortals. So we need to chase financial freedom and time freedom. Then hopefully in between there, you'd get your quality of life. So time freedom is essential, but most people rely on just employment jobs or being an employee will not be able to realize it because what you're doing at that point is you're trading time for money. And so you don't have control over that time. Once it is being paid for, you have to give it. So once you have a business, like I was saying, on the investment, the sources of funds, the biggest pot that you can build for yourself will be businesses because it gives you a very good chance of gaining both time and financial freedom. And there's no limit we can't be using percentages like 1 to 2% that you'd earn from your business because it varies. The type of business, the environment, your understanding, your experience, all those things will come to play into how much your turnover can be or your return on investment can be within your business. But the beautiful part is you have control over it. So that's on the business side. And again, that's a huge workshop on its own. But those are the main sources of funds: investments, government benefits, and also any of your ventures like businesses, enterprises, franchises, and all those things. In terms of next steps, and of course, I'll open up the workshop for questions at this point. But in terms of next steps, I believe that we are able to pick a number of things that we've either written down or noted in our minds to do. And top of mind or top of list on that in that area will be your budgeting. You need to know what your numbers are today, and you need to know what numbers will be sufficient for you tomorrow. So you can apply some of these formulas to start coming up with those numbers. And then in terms of the sources of funds, you have all these variations of where the monies could come from so that you can start anticipating and thinking about it. The time to prepare for war is during the time of peace. If you are 63 years old and you want to retire by 65, it is almost too late for you to start planning for retirement within 2 years at that point. So it makes a whole lot of sense for you to start planning now. So I'll stop at this point and open the floor for questions. Questions, please. I'll start with the one on the screen. It says how to keep most of my income, tax reduction. There are several ways you can do that. So number one is, like I keep saying, prepare that budget. Know exactly what you can afford not to spend on. If we go back to the budgeting template, you see it here. So if movie subscriptions and vacation, if you can trim it down, then you can save a portion of this $1,000. If you have a huge debt that you can quickly pay up or move things around, maybe you have a lot of money on your credit card, you can move that debt into a line of credit that would require you to pay a third of that. Credit card, 22% interest. Line of credit, 7%. So it makes simple sense. Just move it around and pay less so that you can quickly pay it up. Then in terms of reducing taxes as well, you have several things called registered accounts. Registered accounts are provided by the government of Canada so that you can pay less taxes. That's what it is specifically used for. You have different types. You have tax-free savings account, TFSA. You have RRSP, which I mentioned earlier, registered retirement savings plan. You have FHSA, first home savings plan. Then you have registered disability savings plan for those who have challenges. Then you have a few other ones, but those are the four major ones, and all of them work in different ways. For example, TFSA, whatever money you earn inside of your TFSA, you will not pay taxes on it. So it's not even about tax reduction. At that point, it's tax elimination, although you still pay taxes. When you earn money in your TFSA and you withdraw it and you go to the shopping mall to buy something, you're still going to pay federal and provincial taxes. But at least while the money is growing, you do not pay taxes. Another place where you can manage your taxes is in your life insurance policy that has investment, not term insurance policies. Permanent insurance policies have investments in it. If it is structured properly, then of course you can avoid taxes entirely throughout the period when it's growing. And by the time you need to extract your money, you can also either pay zero tax at that point, or you just pay capital gains tax. Capital gains tax as at today is just your money split into two, and just half of it is taxed. In every other situation, in most cases, all of your money is taxed. But for capital gains tax, half of your money is taxed. That will probably change soon, maybe starting from 2026, because there's a policy that wants to override 50-50 right now. But it's a very tax efficient way to manage your money. Capital gains through your life insurance policy, that's another one. Then your registered retirement savings plan. Now I say that with caution because you're not going to pay taxes today, but you're going to pay taxes tomorrow. And if your taxes tomorrow is more than what it is today, then you are not really saving money. Then you'd also have to consider things like inflation that will weigh your money down. It's a conversation on its own. So if you want, we can definitely take that out of the session and I'll help you break that apart and help you understand it more. I have virtually all these things that I just mentioned. So I understand that it works both theoretically and in practice. So yeah, there are several ways for you to reduce your taxes. If you extract money for your RRSP from source, you could also save taxes right from the source. So you have a 9 to 5, you earn $5,000, you already pay taxes of 1,005. If you make contributions into your retirement plan from source, you'll pay less taxes. Then if you have less tax rate, like your marginal tax rate is less in the future, ultimately you would have saved that taxes genuinely. Then by the time you're filing your taxes and you get those things called tax refund, it makes sense for you to put it back into your investments so that you can grow your investments faster. And there is a strategy for you doing that for your FHSA such that you're getting an average return of about 50% over the period that you're holding the FHSA for. Or if you annualize that, that's about 10% per annum just because you have and manage your FHSA, that's your first home savings account. But not everybody is eligible for it because there are some requirements for you to be eligible for FHSA. For example, I'm not eligible for FHSA right now. So you have to figure out what works for you. There are so many ways for you to legally save on taxes. Then whenever you save on taxes, what I typically advise is you put that money back into investments. If I get a tax refund of $5,000 today, it makes sense for me to put it into an investment where I can make maybe 10% on it as well. Then that 5K that I just got from the government became 5,005. If I put it into a retirement fund that gives another government returns, then I can put that back. So infinitely, you can grow your money just by being smart with where you're putting it, why you're putting it there, and if you'll be able to access it later on without losing that tax advantage. So it's sometimes it's a simple strategy. Sometimes, depending on which of these registered accounts you're using, it can become a little bit complex. But I can always take time to explain it to you in detail, and you can choose whichever one works for you. So registered accounts are typically the easiest way to save on taxes. The other way is to manage your business, like I said initially. So if you're getting income from business, you're allowed to write off your business related expenses. So if you and I spend exactly the same in expenses, like Charles is spending $4,000, if you make all your income, not from employment, you make it from business, not as a 9 to 5er, then it's possible for you to net the business related expenses from your income before you pay your taxes. So there are several ways. I hope I've been able to provide you with some examples, but of course, we can extend this conversation. Questions, please. We have about 12 more minutes. I had to answer that while we come up with other questions. We need to have questions. So questions, who's going to build the card? We have 22 people on the call. It's nice to have everyone here. It's going to be almost impossible for me to believe that there's no question. Please ask your question.
So good evening. My name is Oluseyi Oshin. The question I I'm not sure I would ask, but I'm not sure if there is an answer. So it's basically an answer I want. Um, we talk reducing tax is one of my biggest issues, right? And apart, I can max up my RRSP, right? And it reduces the tax. But then you talk about the future, right? The fact that I'll I'll end up paying it. But I don't have a business, so the options it's probably going to just be a comment. The options that looks sensible to me is to have a business or probably work as a contract staff where then they pay my company, then I'm the business, then I'm able to set my tax level by maybe paying myself less or things like that. But basically, I'm in a situation where I pay too much tax, in my opinion. And I don't know. Even when I max out my RSP, it's still ridiculous how much I pay
Yeah.
as tax because of my income. So that's why I said I'm not sure if I obviously I can reduce my expenses. The one what comes to me, I understand what I need to do regarding that. A budget, I have a budget and things like that. But is there an option for people who work, let's say, 2 jobs, right? 3 jobs, like you said, and then but they are not contract staff, which means the tax level is set by the government. You can't get a bigger RRSP. Like it's a conundrum. Like how do you fix that?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for the question. So you've answered it in part. The easiest way or the most efficient way for you to manage your taxes is to run a business. So if, for example, you currently have one job or maybe two jobs and you're earning really well, instead of trying to expand your income streams by getting another paid job, it makes sense for you to build something so that you can be in control of it. So set up a business. And then even you might not be the one running the business, it might be a franchise or whatever it is, but it's a company that you own. So that way it's easy for you to decide how much you're earning in additional income within the year, decide how much you're keeping within a corporation. That way you can control your marginal tax. it's possible for you to reduce your marginal tax and be intentional that way. If you have two jobs already, you can drop one and just put all of your effort, all the time that you have available to spend on the second job, put it into a business because that's where you'll be able to control your taxes. That's the least painful way to go about it. Now, if you already have your money trapped in RRSP and you're looking at a huge tax bill later on, there are several from easy to complicated methods to extract your, it's called decumulation strategies, to extract your money from your RRSP and suffer the least amount of pain in taxes. So yeah, there are definitely several ways to go about it. One way is to set up a business, shift some of the burden on the business. The other way is to target your withdrawal strategy for your RRSP. So when is it best for you? Is it when you're in between jobs? When is it best for you to take out money from your RRSP? Because it's not, they call it registered retirement savings plan, but there's no rule that says you cannot take it before you're 65. It's just that whenever you're taking it, it is assessed as income to you for that year. And your income in that year is based on your marginal tax rate, which is a calculation based on the income for previous year. So you need to just understand the moving parts and know when it is best or least painful for you, essentially, for you to extract that money. But if you still have it within your control to structure your income streams, then put a lot of weight on owning, having a business, running a partnership, an enterprise, a corporation, and all that, as opposed to just taking on additional paycheck because that one you don't have control. They are taking everything from source, everything, and there's a limit to how much you can stockpile on your in your RRSP. It's like 18% of previous year's income. Then they'll take out some pension adjustments in it as well. So the easiest way to control it will be through your businesses. Then the second option will be through several decumulation strategies from your RRSP. So, any other questions? I hope I helped your question a little bit.
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
Any other question? Please ask, 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 speak up, questions, question time, comments. If it's not a question, it could be a comment as well. Comments, share experiences with us. Let's all learn. Let's share from your experiences.
Okay, good evening all.
Good evening.
Yeah, I follow this guy, Dave Ramsey, and I think there's this episode I saw whereby he was advising, I think a 20-year-old guy or something that if he puts aside like $100 for invest $100 for the next uh 25 years or thereabout, it will amount to about $1.7 million dollars. I will not say I'm that fortunate because the age gap, the age is not on my side right now. So how much would you think would be moderate if I could put aside and then say for the next, let's say probably 10 years, what would be the best amount I can put aside to invest monthly, that is?
Thank you very much for the question. So it starts from knowing how much your target is. So the Dave Ramsey said put aside X amount of money for 25 years, you get 1 point something million in 25 years. 1 point something million is the target. Then the next thing will be the rate of return. So what rate of return is the person earning on that money? Because that's what's going to determine how fast it's going to grow. So even if you're putting the same amount for a shorter period of time, then your rate of return will determine how fast you're able to make it. Short answer is it will vary from person to person. But here is the approach that I would advise on it. First, again, is to start from that budget. Once you have your budget in place, you understand how much money you have in these buckets called opportunities. You try to squeeze these other two needs and wants, squeeze them very well. If it's possible for you to put 40% into your opportunities bucket and ensure that there is the least portion of that going into debt so that that money is actually available for investments, that will be the first place to start from. So once you know what that amount is, let's call it maybe $1,500. constantly every month, you can afford to have $1,500 in your opportunities bucket, not to service debt, money available for investment. Then the next question will be drawing up your investor profile. What I mean by that is how much risk can you take with your money? If you're nearing retirement, typically you don't want to risk your money too much. So you want to be comfortable with something that is not too volatile. And the rate of return, risk return is usually almost at par, meaning if you want high returns, you need to be willing to take high risk. But if in this example, you want to take medium to low risk because you're close to your target age, then that means your rate of return will be average. Average could be like maybe 5%. So now you know your principal, 1,005. Now you know your rate of return, 5%. What is the time horizon for you to compound? Simple interest will be 1 year, right? It all goes back, interestingly, it all goes back to that formula we learned in maybe primary school or high school. PRT equal to I. Principal times rate times time equals to interest. So how much interest can you earn on your money is determined by the principal, is determined by the rate and the time horizon. So once you figure out that 1.5 principal, you figure out the rate 5%, then you need to figure out the time within which you want it to compound. So it could be 10 years for you, it could be 8 years, it could be 13 years, whatever it is. So then we can figure out the possibility for you just using that same formula, right? Using that same formula to now add an incremental multiplier to it to turn it into from simple interest into compound interest to know how much it can grow to based on your own timeline. Now we are not just using 1 year, we're using your own timeline, 8 years, 13 years, whatever it is. So I can compound it and accurately tell you if you put 1,005 aside and the rate of return that we are targeting is 5%, we don't want to do anything crazy. And the time horizon we have is 13 years. I can give you what is realistic for you to expect from your money. So you can, and of course, as with mathematics, you can use the known to find the variable or the unknown. So if what you know is just the target amount, 1 million is what I'm chasing, then we can break it down as well to figure out, okay, we know 1,000 is what you are chasing. That's the final figure. We know the time horizon that you have is 15 years or 10 years. Now we need to figure out the principle, how we can vary the principal and the rate. Or if the rate is also fixed, you can't do more than 1,005. Then we need to figure out, are you able to tolerate a higher level of risk such that you can get a rate of return that is about 12%? If the answer is yes, then you have a chance of hitting your target. So when you play around with that simple formula, it is PRT equal to I. Then you can also add a multiplier to it to get the compounding interest. It is that same formula that would help you figure out what is realistic for you. Did I answer your question, sir?
Yeah, yeah. Makes sense. Makes
Yeah.
sense.
So we can always, again, we can always take time outside of the meeting, get deeper into it, use your own specific figures, because obviously I know that we won't all share figures in a general session. So we can always take that time. Hopefully I have all your details. I can always reach out. You can drop a message in the chat if you want me to reach out to you specifically after the chat, or reach out to me directly if you have my contact details. I should show that to us as well. This is my contact details. We're on the hour right now, so definitely let's in respecting everyone's time. If you want to access me, you can call me on that number 204-890-4910, or you can scan the QR code. It will take you to a web page where you can schedule 30 minutes with me, and I'll be able to assist you with your personal questions. Thank you, everyone, for today. I'll share the next invite for the next workshop. I hope this was very useful to everyone. Have a great rest of your weekend. So take a screenshot of my details. Use the QR code to book time with me. Hoping to speak with you soon, sooner than later. If you're still on the call while taking the details and you have questions, I'm still here for the next few minutes. You can definitely hang around.
Hello.
Hi.
Thank you so much for the presentation.
You're welcome.
Sincerely, I would be grateful if maybe um another time or maybe offline budgeting. I must let you know that I've always been doing things off. I know I track my budget, but I don't use any template to, how would I put, formally put things down and track. You understand? But I think you doing that will be of great benefit to me. And I am very highly interested. I'll be grateful you can teach me how to do that again.
Yeah,
Mm.
absolutely. Absolutely. So I can share, I have your contact details, of course. So I'll share a budgeting template with you. And of course, we already have plans to chat. So we will take it on at that point. But it's quite easy. Were you in the session when I talked about the budgeting template? This one. Are you still there? Hello? Okay, I'll reach
Yes,
out to
yeah.
you.
No, I was muted.
Oh, okay.
Yes, I was there when you were making the presentation, so I listened in.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I'll share the budgeting template with you. Then,
Okay.
absolutely. So I'll send the budgeting template to you, then you complete it with your own actual numbers, and
Okay.
we can take it from there for sure.
All right then.
Yeah,
Thank you so much.
you're very
I'm
welcome.
grateful.
Yeah.
Please, if you can send it to me too, I'd appreciate. I'm actually driving, but I joined midway. Also don't know if the recording is available. Thank you for the opportunity.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. You're very welcome. And that's Mr. Oluwafemi. I don't know if I have your number. Did you register your number for the workshop? Did you register
Yes, I
your
did.
number? Okay. So what's your last name? Oluwafemi what? Don't let me distract you from driving. I'll try to, if possible, even send it to everybody. As long as I have the details, I'll send both the budgeting template and maybe the slides to everybody. All right. Do we have any other questions? We still have 7 people on the call. Okay. I got your number, Mr. Oluwafemi. Yeah, sounds good.